Ok, bây giờ những cái phần thông dịch sẽ hiện bây giờ bắt đầu nè.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Go ahead, interpreters, go ahead and head to your rooms as well. And for those even choosing to stay in the original language, English, go ahead and click on that as well. That'll help you throughout the training. So we'll jump into our content here and our disclaimers. For first off, this training is being recorded. This webinar is being recorded. So one, you can go back and take a look at this later. If there's something that you missed and you want to go ahead and access this information later, you're more than welcome to. But those that obviously missed this will have an opportunity to see that as well. So that will be nice. And so, but the first disclaimer is these materials are provided. So going back to recording, sorry, I'll back up. So if you want to stay off camera, that's totally fine. We understand it's a recorded session. Not everyone wants to be recorded. Obviously, please engage with us, come off mute. And when we get to that Q&A section of our training, please feel free to jump in to that. We would love to hear from you. Throw things in the chat as well, obviously. So, and if you're just joining us, make sure that you went ahead and selected your the language of your preference down. There's that little globe button at the bottom of the page for interpretation. So, whatever the language of your preference is, go ahead and click on that. And if you're just coming in.
Nếu mà
So, our
những người
disc
nào mới vào sau á, thì làm ơn bấm cái nút những cái ngôn ngữ là mình đang cần đó, thì bây giờ mình bấm vô cái đó để mà tiếp tục vô để có cái phần thông dịch qua cái ờ, cái sự họp này này.
All right, so our disclaimers for this afternoon: materials provided by First Children's Finance do not constitute legal, accounting, tax, or finance advice or any other professional services. Readers seeking professional advice about specific aspects of their business should consult a member of our staff or another qualified professional. This and other child care provider training materials produced by First Children's Finance are intended for direct use by child care programs, owners, directors, administrators, and or board members to benefit their own programs. Any organization or individual wishing to use those materials for any purpose other than within the child care program should contact First Children's Finance. And again, our additional resources, we have a firstchildrensfinance.org website where we have all of our resources as well. So our mission with First Children's Finance is First Children's Finance is the only national organization solely focused on strengthening sustainability and growth of childcare supply. And so our mission, as we've entered into Oregon for the last 34 years across the country, is to grow that sustainability and excellent childcare. And so focusing on strengthening sustainability and growth is definitely part of that. And so being a part of the infrastructure fund has been obviously a huge piece of that. So we're happy. We would love for you to learn more about what we do. This is definitely part of what we do, being a part of the Child Care Infrastructure Fund, but we offer many other things, which we'll talk about at the end of this training session with cohorts and trainings and whatnot. So hopefully we can learn a little bit more about ourselves. This is our amazing team. As you can all see, these are our perfect photos. So we all look great on these photos. So, but this is the team. A few of us are here today. Valentina, Kyle, myself, and Sansare. I'm sure if you haven't already, met the rest of our team at various times. But this is the Oregon team, and so we're happy to be here. We're all over the state, and so we're happy to support all of you in any way we can. And then my co-presenter for today is Sansare, so she'll be jumping on the second part, or actually the first part of this training after I'm done with the intro. So we'll be kind of tag teaming through this training. And so the Child Care Infrastructure Fund, so this was established through Bill. So for those of you that aren't aware of what this is and you're trying to kind of get a feel for what's going on with the Infrastructure Fund, this was established through House Bill 3005 -05 during the 2023 legislation session. This is to strengthen the infrastructure across Oregon. So the grant hopes to support the development, expansion, and improvement of childcare facilities. So there's a lot that's in there as far as what they want to do with it. So Business Oregon administers the grant, while the Department of Early Learning Care, which DELC, which a lot of folks are familiar with, oversees statewide business technical assistance. So they've been working with Northwest Indiana Chamber and First Children's Finance to support the applicants and awardees. So we're trying to help you, just like with these kind of conversations, these webinars. And the goal of the Child Care Infrastructure Fund is to increase childcare slots, enhance the quality of childcare facilities, and other critical supports that these families need. So the goal is to boost availability. That's the goal. The goal is to boost availability, help those childcare programs that just need that little extra funding as well. So that's the goal. And I would say it's working. I think we're seeing a lot of great results from the first round. And so we're excited to jump into a second round and again, help folks get connected to this fund. Okay, last thing for me. So today we're going to cover two really important topics. We're going to talk about grant writing. So when you talk about grant narrative and how we introduce a narrative into our grant, and then we're going to talk about understanding the rubric. So Sansari is going to talk. She has great skills in grant narratives. She's written a couple personally, I believe, as well. So she's going to give some great feedback as far as what that means, and then I'll be kind of discussing the rubric. Which is available to you. We'll talk about what that looks like. And I've often talked about the rubric being a really key guide to your application. So we're going to work through both those sections today and better understand so that way you can maximize your chance of funding. We really want to help you maximize your chance. And so good grant narratives help you tell your story, but then following the rubric appropriately will help you score well for your grant. So that way you have the best chance of funding. So okay, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Sansare, and she's going to talk through grant narratives.
So much, Jack. All right, let's get started with the grant narrative. So, what is the grant narrative? A grant narrative is where you present a compelling case that helps the funder to understand why your project is worth the investment. It not only highlights the need and impact, but also demonstrates your planning, readiness to proceed, and the ability to manage funds responsibly. Let's take a look at the key components of a grant narrative. First, we have the project description. What is the project and what are you trying to achieve? Second, we have a needs assessment. What community need or gap is your project addressing? It's very, very important to use data to support that need. And number three, project and goals and objectives. What specific outcomes are you aiming for? Here you want to apply the SMART goal setting framework. And number four, activities and timeline. What steps will you take and by when? What are the due dates? Here you want to have a timeline from start to finish that includes those key dates of deliverables and outcomes. And finally, evaluation and impact. How are you going to track progress and measure success? A strong evaluation includes key performance indicators such as enrollment numbers, family satisfaction surveys, and a compelling case for safety standards. Moving forward on the next slide, let's go ahead and talk about the project description. This is where you have to put a clear and concise overview of your project. When writing this section, keep in mind a few key points. First, you want to provide a brief description of your project. Include project details such as location, the scope of work, and key facility upgrades you plan to make. Here are some tips. Focus on clarity. Avoid using jargon and technical terms that would make your application hard to understand. And also, you want to highlight this project and why it matters. Stress the importance of the project to your child care center and also to the community. And step number two is the needs assessment. This is where you explain why your project is necessary and how it addresses a critical gap in child care services. Start by clearly defining the problem for your project and what it intends to solve. For example, is there a high demand for childcare? Is your facility outdated? Are there safety issues? Next, include data to strengthen your case. Use local data, enrollment trends, a wait list, or parent and community surveys to show the need. Here are some key questions to address. What is the current state of childcare services in your area? How does your project fill the gap or meet an unmet need? Step three is all about measurable goals for your project. This is important because when you get the grant, your goals are going to serve as a benchmark to track progress, ensuring that your project stays on course. Comparing goals to progress allows you to identify challenges so you can seek help early if needed. Your goals should clearly state what you want to achieve, whether it's increasing the childcare capacity, improving safety, or enhancing learning environments. It's a great idea to break down larger goals into smaller milestones and key deliverables. To ensure that your goals are effective, always apply the SMART framework, which means your goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Again, a great tip for goal setting is really breaking down those large goals into smaller objectives. And an example of this goal should be increasing enrollment by 20% within 6 months of project completion. As you can see, it follows the SMART framework. It has the 20% and the 6 months, so it's measurable and it's also time-bound. Moving forward to the next slide. Step number 4, this focuses on your project timeline and key activities. Funders want to see a clear roadmap of how and when your project will be executed. Start by listing all major activities, including milestones like facility design, construction, and staff training. Then break these activities into a timeline with phases, deliverables, and due dates. This is not only going to help you to track progress, but it also ensures accountability for the grant funds. For example, your timeline might look like facility design in months 1 to 2, renovation and construction in months 3 to 6, and staff training in month 7. Here are some key tips. Make sure your timeline aligns with your project goals. Also, identify any dependency activities. This means activities that rely on completing the completion of other steps before they can begin. And step number 5, evaluation and measuring impact. Funders want to see how you're going to assess whether your project is achieving its intended outcomes. This means using both qualitative and quantitative measures. Things like facility capacity, enrollment numbers, and parent satisfaction surveys are examples. To strengthen your evaluation plan, consider these questions. What are the short-term and long-term outcomes of your project? And how will you ensure that your goals are being met? For example, success might look like increased enrollment, positive feedback from parents, and improved staff retention. Having evaluation metrics helps to measure the short-term and the long-term impact of your project. On to the next slide. Receiving grant funds is a huge responsibility. Funders need to be confident that you can successfully implement your project. Demonstrating readiness is where you showcase your preparedness by highlighting your planning, capacity, leadership, and financial stability. To strengthen your application, consider these key elements. Planning and capacity. Show that your organization has the capacity to handle the project and that you laid out a plan for success. And number 2, staffing and leadership. Highlight the expertise of your staff and leadership team and how their skills will contribute to the success of this project. And finally, financial stability. Provide assurance that you have the financial resources and you can manage the funds responsibly. If you have a partner or a collaborator on the project who's going to commit funds to the project, you should include letters of financial commitment in your application. Here's a general example that brings all the elements together. Our team includes experienced project managers and educators who have successfully completed similar renovations and expansions in the past. There are many other supportive documents that can include in your application that can demonstrate readiness, and that is a business plan, a parent handbook, Spark rating certificate, a director's resume, oral step level, and employee retention and recruitment plans. Given that CCIF is a competitive grant, it's a great idea to showcase what makes your project unique and how it directly benefits your community. So think about what sets your project apart from others. Focus on unique aspects that make your project well-positioned to serve the community. To strengthen your application, emphasize key aspects like community impact. How does your project benefit the children and families in your area? Does it address specific local needs, such as serving an underserved population? Also, inclusive practices. Highlight any diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Share about partnerships. If you have partnerships with local organizations or community groups that enhance the impact of your project, make sure to mention them. And finally, staffing ratios. Staffing ratios are a crucial role to maintaining high quality care, ensuring child safety, and also meeting state requirements. Whether your project maintains or increases childcare slots, funders will want to see that you have a solid plan to manage staffing. In your grant narrative, highlight changes to staffing ratios and new hires, include your staff recruitment and retention strategy. Funders need confidence that you can hire, train, and retain qualified staff to support the program. Now that we've covered key elements of a grant narrative, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. Here are 4 best practices that will make your grant narrative more compelling. Number 1, when writing a grant narrative, you want to engage your audience by showing the human side of your project. Funders want to see the real impact, how your project supports children, families, and the community. If you have data to back it up, you will have a strong case. Number 2, focus on a clear and concise language. Avoid using jargon and overly technical explanations. Keep it straightforward so that anyone can understand it. Number 3, it's also important to highlight the impact. What long-term benefits will your project bring? Funders want to see how their investment is going to make a lasting impact. And 4, finally, be transparent. No business or project is without challenges, so don't shy away from talking about them. A strong narrative acknowledges potential obstacles and explains how you will overcome them. Now, let's talk about common pitfalls you should avoid. Avoid vague descriptions. Be specific. And in every section of your application, try to give examples, right? So instead of saying something like, we need more childcare slots, use data to show exactly how many families are on the wait list or struggling to find care. Lack of measurable outcomes. Funders want to see clear, realistic goals that can be tracked over time. A goal like increase enrollment is too broad. Make it measurable, such as increase enrollment by 20% within 1 year. And next, overlooking evaluation. This is a common pitfall. Funders need to know how you are going to measure success. If you don't have a plan to track progress, funders might assume that you are not experienced in managing funds. They may be hesitant to give you public dollars for spending. So make sure that you've mapped out the project timeline, milestones, objectives, and evaluation criteria. This will also serve as your roadmap to project success. So now that you know how to craft a compelling grant narrative, your next step in this after this presentation is to draft your project narrative, focusing on the areas that we discussed, then review and revise the narrative to ensure that it's clear, concise, and aligned with CCIF guidelines. All right, Jack, you'll take it forward from here.
Okay, thank you, Sansere. Yeah, so great info on grant narratives. So let's go ahead and jump on. So when you officially apply, you'll be graded. So once you hit submit, it'll be brought over to Business Organ, and Business Organ will start the process of grading your, I don't want to say grading, scoring your application. So this is how this works. So the Triangle Infrastructure Fund is very competitive grant. So you're going to want to aim to get as high of a score as possible because you want to increase your chances. So the good news is the applications are being evaluated using the predefined criteria, which is publicly available. So you have access to this information. We're going to talk through the different phases of the scoring. And again, the purpose of it is to be fair, transparent, and consistent with awarding funds. So the way that it works is that the first step is going to be the initial screening where the applications are checked for eligibility and completeness. So they'll have that first step. The second will be the reviewer score applications based on scoring criteria. They are trained to ensure consistent scoring across all applicants. And the third is a panel will review the applications to ensure fairness and alignment with the infrastructure fund goals. And then finally, decisions are made. So the panel is a group of subject matter experts who will conduct an in-depth review of the top scoring applications to ensure alignment with CCIF's priorities. The process looks like this. The panel will review the scores, but they're also going to consider qualitative factors such as the different, does the application project align with overarching goals of the fund? So for instance, are they increasing childcare in an underserved area and equitable access? So they're going to be looking at some of that more qualitative data as well, beyond just the scores. If there are any red flags or concerns that may have not been captured in the scoring phase, for example, financial sustainability and community engagement, the panel may adjust scores based on its assessment, and the panel's decision will determine which applications advance into the final selection phase. So the panel review phase ensures that scoring is consistent with CCIF's mission and that the most impactful projects are awarded. So it's a very thorough process, I think, is the easy review on that. Okay, so each application is going to be evaluated in 4 key categories. So it's going to be a total of 40 points. The higher score, obviously, the more competitive your application is going to be. The largest scoring category is the program type and priority populations, which accounts for 17 of the points. So this is a big item of it, and this is about you and your program. This means that they prioritize the projects that are going to span childcare for the high need community. So the CCIF committees are going to really focus in on who are you serving and are you going to make a big impact in those communities. And then the other key areas are going to include readiness to proceed. So and we're going to talk about each of those sections and what that means. We talked a little bit about it in the narrative, as well as community alignment and sustainability. So there's going to be 3 of those additional areas. Those are going to be aspects that, again, you're going to want to make sure that you are looking closely at the rubric to make sure that you are maximizing the points in all those 4 categories. Okay, so readiness proceed. So the way this one works is that readiness category is worth 9 points. It's going to evaluate if your project can begin immediately after funding is awarded. So basically, do you have everything in place to hit the ground running as soon as you're awarded? So as soon as check in hand, can you start working on what you need to work on? So since the funds must be used within a specific time frame, projects that are well planned and ready to start will receive higher scores. Points are awarded based on 2 factors: whether your project has the necessary approvals, permits, and funding, whether your timeline is clear and realistic. So Sansari talked a lot about that in the grant narrative piece. So you're going to want to make sure when you go back to looking at your narrative and how you wrote it, is it hitting a lot of these key points that you're looking for on your readiness to proceed score? So again, keeping that rubric in mind when you're applying. To maximize your score, include documentation such as zoning approvals, permits, contractor bids, and letters of financial commitment, along with realistic work plan with activities, deadlines, and key milestones. So the more prepared your project is, the stronger your score. So again, look closely, try to maximize your score. We want you to obviously get a 9 out of 9, and so that you have the best chance of moving forward in the scoring. And then going back to the program types and priority populations. So this is that section with 17 points. So this is a really key area of your application. So make sure that you review these sections really closely and making sure that you are maximizing your points in these areas. Don't miss something and say no to something that might be a yes. For instance, one is that there's a full point given to folks that are ERDC listed that accept ERDC. So that's a point that you can be getting. Make sure that when you get to that section of the application that you're hitting yes on that. So this category is making most of the heavily weighted section in the scoring rubric. So this is the first phase of scoring. So actually it's going to be scored in by phases. So this will be the first phase, and then you move into the next 3 sections for the second phase. But this first phase is going to how you determine if you move into that second phase. So the way this one's broken down is projects located in childcare deserts will receive priority points. So that's all listed on the rubric. It shows exactly which what county is considered the highest scoring for desert data. And so just review that, and then you'll know exactly what priority populations are looking for as far as desert data goes. These are areas where they are limited to no childcare options. So again, the points are based on quartiles with projects in the top quartile. In addition, projects that serve priority populations and earn additional points. This includes programs that provide infant and toddler care, accept ERDC, offer childhood special education services, and have culturally specific focus or operate bilingual programs. Again, look closely at the rubric. There are sections on the application that are clearly based on those questions, and so make sure that you're answering those appropriately to score the best you can. To maximize your score, clearly demonstrate how your program fills a gap in the community and meets the needs of the priority populations. Use data, waitlist numbers, or local demand reports to support your case. So again, going back to that narrative piece that Sansari talked about, you're going to want to make sure that your narrative is fitting those areas so you can score as well as you can on this section. So since the category has the highest point value, a strong response here can make a major difference in your total score. Okay, moving into community alignment. And so we're going to move into community alignment and then we'll finish off with sustainability points. So this section's worth 6 points. So community alignment category is worth 6 points. And again, Sansari talked a lot about this as well in the narrative piece. This is how well your project meets the specific needs of your community. So does the project address high priority populations, specific geographic regions? Health and safety considerations will score higher. To maximize your score, data or research that demonstrates the need for childcare in your community. This includes waitlists, demographic data, or parent surveys showing demand for your service. And again, additionally, this needs to clearly explain how your project will positively impact the families in your community and help address those specific childcare gaps. Again, the narrative on this will be key. There's going to be different components. You're going to want to there's going to be an indicator reference. And so on the rubric, it'll show some specific indicators. And so you'll want to make sure, am I hitting the amount of indicators I can need to in order to score the best I can? So look closely at that and see, am I sharing enough about my program and what my program can do? So make sure that you're sharing plenty about how you're aligned with your community. Don't undershare for this section. And lastly, sustainability. So the sustainability category is worth 8 points. This measures whether your childcare program will remain stable beyond the grant period. So funders want to ensure that these investments provide long-term benefits. So this isn't just like a couple year project. This is something they want to see in long term. There'll be a key requirement in the continued use period, which means that they want to note how long they want you to remain in business. So a set number of years after receiving the grant. So you want to look closely when you look at the program guidelines of the grant amount that you're looking for. How many years are you required to remain in business? Points in this category are based on 2 factors. So whether your project has solid financial plan, and second, how well you've planned for staffing, enrollment, and long-term operations. Again, this section is really well defined in the rubric. It'll break down exactly what the different items are and key indicators are that you are a sustainable program. So focus closely on those key indicators that they give you examples on and make sure that you're sharing about those. So that way you can hit as many of those key indicators as you can so you can maximize your score on sustainability. So documents that also will help. They also want to know your long term and how long you've been a provider. And so even if you haven't been a provider very long, there are other ways that you can score in this section. So make sure that you're looking closely at the rubric and seeing that, even though I haven't been in childcare for a long time, am I a part of other things that show that I have long-term sustainability? So things like that can be like, do you have strong business plans, budgets, financial projections, marketing strategies? Do you have recruitment and retention plans? Also, are you part of networks? Are you part of cohorts? What have you done to better your business? So those examples will be on the rubric as well. And so be sure to look at those closely and make sure that if you are a part of those things to indicate that so you can be scored on that. And ultimately, funders want to see that your childcare program will continue operating successfully for years to come. They want to be a worthy investment. Okay, so lastly, tips for strong application. So before you submit your application, before you hit submit, here's some key best practices to help strengthen your submission. So first, be clear and detailed. Provide a plan, budget, and timeline. Reviewers need to see exactly how your project will be executed. Second, address community needs. Show how your program aligns with childcare gaps in your area. Use data, waitlists, surveys, or letters of support to back up your case. Third, focus on sustainability. Include a plan for long-term financial health and program stability beyond the grant period. And finally, follow all the guidelines. Make sure that your application is complete. You have everything you need to have in there. Do you have all the different quotes that you need, the bids that you need? Have you indicated all the different areas of how you're a sustainable business, how you have a community alignment? Just do that one last couple glances at your application. Make sure that you are lining it up as well as you can. Remember that a well-prepared application increases your chances of getting awarded. So again, going back to that scoring rubric, you want to make sure that you're maximizing that. Okay, so at this time, we want to open it up for questions and answers. So again, this time is really beneficial. There's going to be a lot of probably specific questions about your project, and we'd be happy to jump into a couple of those. But mostly what we want to do at this time is if you have basic questions around the different things that we talked about today. So if you have a little more of like an individual, like, hey, I need to kind of talk through a more individual case, we'd be happy to follow up with you. We'll have our email and whatnot at the end of this. And so we're happy to connect with you on a more individual basis after this. But if you just have general questions that you think would be applicable to the group, we would love to talk about those. So feel free to jump in and come off mute or drop in the chat, and we have about we have a little over 20 minutes to go through those questions. So feel free to jump in. I no, Amy, and I'll let Kyle jump in if I'm mistaken, but I do not believe putting in an application early will grant you any points. I don't think they'll be looking at them until April 30th. So take your time, submit it when you feel like you're ready to be ready for it to be submitted. We've reviewed a few times, but yeah. Yes, please take the classes if that helps you. Yeah, yeah, great question. Yeah, so take the courses. We have a couple more which we'll talk about. Northwest Native Chamber is also sharing a few as well. So maximize your input so that way you can put out a great application. So Holly, I think I'm understanding your question. So it involves partnership to build facility. Both partners have over 20 years of experience. And I'm guessing you're talking 20 years in childcare experience. Then yes, yeah, for that section that is noted, do you have 20 years of experience? Is it like a combined 20 years of experience? I just want to clarify what you're asking there. I believe on the rubric it's 11 or more years. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Thursday evening, I believe, Amy, you're talking about one of our trainings that we're doing. That work is separate from the infrastructure fund. Oh yeah, yeah. We don't record those sessions, but we will be having that training again in May. So I would just look to try to register for the next one in May. We're doing that exact same training in May. Yeah, good question. Okay, Holly, I'm jumping back in with you. Each entity has over 20. Oh, got it. Yeah. One in childcare and higher education. Yeah. So yeah, I would say absolutely. You have 20 years plus of experience. So when you get to that section, when it comes to your years of experience, I believe it's 11 plus years, you're absolutely going to score on that. And Norma, I see your hand is up. If you want to jump off mute, I'm happy to answer your question.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, it's soft, but I can hear you.
Okay. I do have a question about the program types and priority populations. It says that you will get there at 17 points, but on the rubric, I see just 6 points. Can you please explain me more, a little bit more about that?
I couldn't quite hear you. Kyle or Sansray, were you able to hear Norma and answer her question?
No, Norma, I'm sorry. It's a little bit
Okay, just
muffled.
one.
Would you be able
Okay.
to drop the question in the chat by chance?
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Norma. I apologize.
Sorry.
Thank
Yeah.
Next, Amy had a question about, so the next webinar training, and I will drop that into the chat. We were going to drop that later, but we'll drop that in the chat as well. As far as the schedule of the next webinars, and yeah, Valentina dropped it in as well. Next one is going to be Tuesday the 15th from 7 to 8 a.m. And Amy, we do have a training coming up on Thursday. It's a policy and training it's not childcare infrastructure fund related. It's more to do with your childcare individually. So I am hosting that training as well. But yeah, that's a little more specific training on your childcare, not necessarily the infrastructure fund. So I think you signed up for one of our other trainings. Okay, I'm just going back into the chat here.
I see a question from Nilmini. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It says here that I received emails and
Yes,
calls.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I did want to ask, do you have a log of inquiries when people call and they ask for care, or perhaps a log of those who dropped out? If you can have that documented, that also helps to show demand.
Okay. Yeah, most of the parents they call or email and they actually like they find a job and they want it right away. So then we don't even keep them in a list. Before COVID, I used to have a wait list since I provided infant toddler care in one location. Completely, it was done for infant toddler care. But I'm thinking again, start the infant toddler care, which is in high demand. But how do I show that? Just the call? So because you can't record a call and say, hey, this is this.
Are
How
you
do I
able,
show the demand in that case?
if you are able to go back to those emails, or if you can track those past conversations you had, maybe you can start a document or a spreadsheet where you log those interactions so that you can keep track of it all.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Hope that answers your question. Do you have any more questions?
So, in when it comes to infants and toddlers, that doesn't count as a childcare desert, that is in those other areas. But we'll say there are not enough infants and toddler care. Are they considered a childcare desert area or not?
That's a good question. So yes, they are. There's actually a priority given for those who provide infant and toddler care. For example, if their project is going to expand childcare slots for that age group 0 to 2, that is a priority given. So that is definitely an option for you if that's something you want to highlight in your application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Nicole, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can. Yeah.
Okay. I dropped my question in the chat, but I think it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. I was curious if the application is being looked at as a whole, like meaning if in that first section, because I looked on the rubric and it looks like it's scored in kind of like two phases. The first phase is more of like the childcare desert location and hours of operation and those kind of guidelines. If say if we score on the, if we don't score on the higher end of that first phase, are they still looking at all of our phase 2 submissions and business plans and all of the answers that we've submitted? Or is it like it's kind of like a if we don't score well in the first phase, then they don't even look at the phase two?
It's a good question, Nicole. Yeah, so based on the scoring rubric, at the bottom of that phase one, it says the score will determine whether the applicant moves on to the second phase of scoring. So whether an applicant advances in scoring phase two depends on how others scored in the project type. So whether or not they look at it, I'm not sure. I'll let Kyle or Valentina jump in that. But yes, it does affect your scoring. So like we talked about, they are prioritizing certain populations and childcare slot needs and increases. So that's why they put that piece in. They want to prioritize that. So that 17 points impacts obviously the rest of it. So as far as them looking at the rest of it, I'm not sure how they scored that. But yes, they will look at that first phase to determine if you move into the second phase.
And then Nicole, are you asking like also if your previous application will be considered in this second application submission?
No, it's like on how it's worded on the rubric, like the scoring rubric that is on available on the website. It basically just says like all those things that Jacqueline mentioned in the it says literally in the bottom of the page like phase one, and then they will not move on to phase two, which then would be like all of the questions that we're answering and the narrative we're telling and the business plans we're submitting and bids and documentations and everything that is kind of like the meat of the narrative in the grant. That's my question is, are they even going to look at that if we don't score high enough on that first phase? So it's not necessarily round like the first round of the grant, like a few months ago, and then this is round two. I'm just talking strictly phase one and phase two on that scoring rubric.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I think just reiterating kind of what Jack had mentioned, that it's important to kind of highlight in your application all the pieces that you're receiving points for. Um, and then of course we can look at like we can schedule time with you individually to kind of go through your application, go through your documents to make sure that we're that you are submitting your information so that you can be a qualified candidate, get pushed through those different phases.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I think they will be reviewing the application as a whole, but as far as scoring goes, they will score specifically on certain areas before they score the next part of it. So I don't think that's not that they won't see it, what you're all doing in your project, but based on how they score it, it will be done in phases. Yeah, a good question. Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up. Okay, any other questions before we got a little over 10 minutes here, so I want to give us time to do any questions before end of our time. Anything else around grant narratives or the scoring rubric? And like I think was mentioned, the rubrics are on the Infrastructure Fund website, and so make sure you go in there and click on those and take a look at those. Those are very helpful. Okay. Well, as always, feel free to reach out. We have our email there right on the screen, info.organ@firstchildrensfinance.org. And So this does not have to be the last time you talk to all of us. We're obviously available via email and phone. So we are busy with calls and emails, but we are again happy to connect. And so please be sure to do so. Again, the closing of the application period is April 30th, and our next one of these webinars is on the 15th. And so be sure to go to that. And the link was dropped in the chat as well, I think, once. And so be sure to connect with those. But I'll let Sansari finish us off here.
Thank you, Jack. Before we head out, I just want to tell you about the incredible trainings that we offer that can really help to strengthen your CCIF grant application. At First Children's Finance, we are experts in childcare business model innovation, and we have free trainings that cover topics such as budget and cash flow projections, developing a marketing plan, business policies and practices, and so much more. And each training gives you practical handouts that you can apply back to your business. So to register for the trainings, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can head to firstchildrensfinance.org/Oregon. And we also have, like Jack mentioned, there's going to be more webinars like this. And I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat once more, where you can register. And touching back on who we are and what we do at First Children's Finance, we are a leader in growing the supply of excellent childcare. We empower childcare businesses and collaborate with communities in the state of Oregon to identify and implement strategies to increase the supply of high-quality childcare. We bring a new way of thinking about facility use, licensing reform, financial incentives, and community partnerships. And our contact information is provided on this slide, and don't hesitate to reach out to us. All right. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so
Thank you
much for
all.
coming.
And I did see Valentina just dropped in the chat as well. Feel free to please join us for our First Children's Finance Oregon Conference, where you can receive credit for business training and connect with other childcare business owners. So there's a link in the chat. It's also on our website, First Children's Finance website. So be sure to register for that. Early bird is through the 15th. So we hope to see you all there. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your afternoon.